Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
This is David Tulis, the leading journalist in Chattanooga, maybe number 4 or number 5 in the rankings if I was going to be fair about it. I don't know that I would be number 1. I would not claim that. Maybe other people might suggest that, but probably the leading journalist is Dave Flessner, followed by Judy Walton. And then number 3, well, maybe between John Wilson at Chattanoogan.com and David Carroll at TV3. And then there are other notables as well. But I'm here, and I mentioned the business about being a journalist because I am, and I do a lot of legal reading and find my news in the interaction of officials over law or under law or around law, and that is my coverage. Often is our officials obeying their authorities. And however, though I'm a journalist, I'm also a salesman, and it's interesting to consider the idea of salesman and the work of Joe Johnson, a pro bono labor in behalf of the Hamilton County Department of Education. Now, the HCDE, it just sounds like a mouthful. It sounds very uninviting, and it really doesn't sell the state factory school as it's run here in Hamilton County. And so Joe has been, as the press tells us this morning, considering ways of rebranding the public school system here. The alien satellite, the alien spaceship, if you will, which has landed in Chattanooga and somehow changed the landscape, made people look like unto it, made people think like unto it, and to seem like unto it, and to dream like unto it without anyone realizing it, without even the media making note of it. Even though we've had this system of free public schools in our Constitution for decades, more than a century, and even though these schools have been there, altering the landscape in favor, well, you could say in favor of Nashville, effectively, though not the city of Nashville, but the religious corporation that resides there, that has its headquarters there, and that is our state capital. And the school system, I say it's a kind of an alien spaceship that's landed like District 9, right? It's not District 9 where over Pretoria or Cape Town, the city in which that movie is set, the spaceship hovers over the city for decades, and other manifestations of that invasion are underground around about the city. But it is rather integrated within. It's hard to see the ship has landed there, and it's hard to see that it is emitting a pulsating series of messages to all those who pass by, or all those who pass within the realm of its sway. And that would be, of course, the students and their families, all of whom have been made not to see things anymore, not to see the obvious. And we have, though, a problem. There's some glimmer in the heart of the public here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County and elsewhere. I dare say elsewhere too, that maybe we're not quite right with things. Things are not, the name Department of Education, it sounds so French. It sounds so official. It sounds rather like there's a government bureaucracy, a department here. And well, that doesn't really confer our acceptance. It doesn't confer our approval. It really suggests somehow that it's against us and over us, and forcing us to do things. It is making things happen for us. And we know good and well that we as Americans here in Chattanooga, we make things happen on our own. We are free people, and we decide things. We are Americans after all. We dominate every landscape that we look upon. And so there's a need to change the name of Hamilton County Department of Education to something better that comports more with our sort of mysterious perception of this entity, and one that a terminology which sort of glosses over the suggested disharmony between a department and a people, right? So rather than say that there's a department providing services and imposing the will of the state upon us here in our service, right? Of course, it's all in our service and for our good. Why, we'll change the name. And Joe has been considering the term the public schools of Hamilton County. it has a nice ring to it. When I hear that, I hear not the sense. I don't get the sense of a delivery system for an inept people. I don't get that sense, but rather I have with the word the direct article, the public schools of Hamilton County. There is a sense of pride, a sense of identity. We are Hamilton County, and we are the public schools of Hamilton County. It's kind of a declaration of our purpose and our being and our will. If you have just HCDE, it sounds like a welfare agency of some kind, maybe out of Washington, and so it's a little bit alienating. It is not about the affinity, right, that public school has with you, my listener, you the happy consumer thereof, and the willing participant in all the you might say the charade. I'm going to be harsh here. All the charade of education that it purports to deliver. And now there is some education that goes on in a public school, though the main angry lessons of public schools are not really about education. They're more about drawing the people out from their own genius, their own distinct narratives, their own distinct personal narratives that flow from every family into every individual as a member of that family who goes to that school as a patron, right? The student, the pupil. And what we have broken off there, what we have cut off, is that private narrative, the private genius, which is cut off and pushed back and bottled up and sterilized. And what we have created in the public school is the citizen, right? The citizen who does what he's supposed to do, who does not, who reveres the state, who has an implicit acceptance of the state and state government, state economy, state thinking as the norm. The state is the norm, and we cannot have our ideas apart from it. Even though we may be Christians, right? Even though we may be Muslims, even though we may be humanists, we can't have any system that is somehow beyond and above the state. The state is the you might say the idol. I'm going to be direct, perhaps. It is a kind of idol, and before it we fall, and before it we submit our futures, namely our children. And so the idea of changing the branding of this bureaucracy, I'd say it's important. I say it's important for the internal coherence of that organization and its people, and but more importantly, it's important to have the people who are the subjects of it, the funders of it through state taxes and through county and city taxes, that they be made to feel better about it. And that's Joe Johnson's work. Not just words from HCDE to the public schools of Hamilton County, with its $65,000 a year website, overseen by Superintendent Brian Johnson, but rather this entity with that new name and a picture, maybe some kind of picture with a logo, right? If you have those two things, you have made essential and important reforms, and the people are going to, they'll see things more in your favor. That is what advertising is all about. And I mentioned the idea of advertising because I'm David Tulis, and I'm your host here, urging you to love your neighbor and buy local, suggesting that near is better than far, small than big, and simple than complex, and in the footnotes, personal better than corporate, and physical than abstract. Brought to you by Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters. Advertising is really all about you, and I tell people to whom I make a pitch for airing on my station, look, your commercial, your 30-second commercial or your minute-long commercial is not about you. It really can't be about you. You're in it, but it's not about you. It is framed, a commercial is framed, or a brand is framed in terms of the listener or the viewer or the reader. It's always somehow about him or her. And so a good commercial is from the mind of the listener, and it's a narrative in which he sees his satisfaction being attained, whether it's for a sandwich, for a new car, or for a medical service, or for lawyering. Even a law firm has to have its commercials not about its stolid boardroom perspective and its name and all that. That's not what a commercial for a law firm should be about. It should be about results for your problem, right? That's what it's about. The bonding service would have the same kind of commercial. It's about liberation from your unjust and difficult circumstance with the officer, right? That's the commercial is supposed to be that's supposed to be airing. If it's Rick Davis, well, Rick Davis, Mr. Golden Diamonds, it's all about cash. It's all about you. Cash, cash, cash. You see, that's how commercial works. It is about you. And I have a lot to get to today. And and so rebranding, well, okay, we here on the David Tulis Show approve of rebranding of the Hamilton County schools, and Joe Johnson is giving away thousands of dollars in labor because he cares about public schools, right? And so do you. And so we're going to have a new name here for us. Just beware what's happening, and kind of think in terms of the whole idea of the development of propaganda back in the 30s and 40s, and how propaganda changes the discourse. Right, you change the vocabulary, and so certain things are just impossible to see anymore. And I hope, as your host here on the David Tulis Show, at all new Nooga Radio 92.7, that, well, hold on, 95.3 HD4 too. We're on these two fabulous and wonderful signals, one penetrating 65 miles out and the other penetrating bunkers. We have bunker busting signals here on Nooga Radio, and we are here to serve you and to give you an alternative narrative. I would say, yes, I argue the Minority Report, and you can call me at 800-8949, 800-8949. Yuri Martin is 58 years old. Well, he was before he was slain by 3 deputies. And this week, the news is good. The grand jury of Washington County, Georgia, acted correctly to indict 3 officers, 3 sheriff's deputies, for slaying him. They were charged with 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter each, false imprisonment, aggravated assault, simple assault, and reckless conduct. He'd never been charged with a crime, and yet 3 deputies, Michael Howell, Henry Copeland, and Rhett Scott, surrounded him as he was walking a 20-mile walk to visit relatives. He was thirsty, and he asked to pass another person en route if he could have some water. This person called police. And 58-year-old Yuri Martin, according to CBS affiliate, we are CBS, by the way, WMAZ in Washington County, says this man was captured in a video where he is shot. He's surrounded by 3 beefy deputies. They're all, why are they so beefy? And he's tased. He falls down, shaking. He sits up, and then we're seeing in the small images him falling over again backwards, and his legs and knees throbbing in violence, and he dies from that encounter. The DA Hayward Altman, rightly bringing charges before the grand jury in an October press conference, he said, Mr. Martin, as far as we can establish, had done nothing wrong. And then he says about the grand jury's decision on Tuesday, the system is designed in the state of Georgia at this point in time, or as designed, is as probably the best system in the country for handling these type of cases. It worked as far as what the grand jury made in determination today. The family of Yuri Martin always believed, says Francis Johnson, the attorney, that something went horribly wrong on that fateful day. Today, a grand jury of citizens here in Washington County decided that a crime had been committed. So that sometimes the system does work, though district attorneys are, as part of the Fellowship of the Finger, they are the accusing part of the state, and their job is to accuse. They are accusers and chief accusers. Now, police are as we're considering the Cameron Williams arrest with him and his girlfriend Nikki Lewis at the Glass House Co-op over on Glass Street. An amazing arrest where both are treated like a bag of potatoes by Officer E. Buckman. No Miranda warning, by the way. No Miranda warning pursuant to police department policy and pursuant to the 1966 ruling from the Supreme Court of Miranda, Arizona versus Miranda. Now, in Schertz, Texas, a shootout. Again, deputies, courageous deputies. A woman involved was being sought. She had several warrants out for her arrest, but there was a shootout that the police allowed themselves to have between her and these deputies from Bexar counties. The Pecan Grove Mobile Home Park, and the boy was struck by police bullets in the abdomen by a stray bullet. He was taken to the University Hospital where he died. We want the family and everyone to know that this is of utmost importance to us, according to Spectrum News Sheriff Javier Salazar. The woman who was called a suspect, is dead also, but a child was killed. There was no way to get her out of there, or to outweight her, so that she might be arrested. Since she was armed, she might be arrested somewhere else. So why do deputies not think about the larger picture? Why do we have officers, courageous officers, chasing people in high-speed chases, which are always dangerous? High-speed chases are always dangerous. Do we forget that radio signals go faster than any car, even if the accelerator is all the way down, any cruiser, even though the accelerator is all the way down to the floor? Damien Grimes, 15 years old, he was shot by a Michigan state trooper who fired a taser from the window of his cruiser at this boy, 15 years old, on an ATV, causing this young man to crash and to perish. Former trooper Mark Bessner, 43, was pursuing Damien Grimes for illegally riding an ATV through his Detroit neighborhood in August, according to a report in truthfight.com. Trooper Bessner unnecessarily deployed his taser at Mr. Grimes without legal justification or excuse, as Mr. Grimes was traveling at least 35 to 40 miles per hour, according to prosecutor Kim Worthy. And after Damon was tased and then hit a parked truck, and died, according to the Detroit Free Press. The use of force is inculturated in some towns. There's a city in Alabama, a town with no more than 550 people residing in it. But in this town, there was the idea. Well, we're facing financial troubles, according to Reason magazine. So what we're going to do is we're going to have traffic stops, and we're going to use every traffic stop that we can to seize, under the civil asset forfeiture provisions of state law, seize the cars as subject to seizure because they're involved somehow, though we don't have to prove it, in the drug trade. It allows departments to keep 100% of the items seized. The claim would be that there was a suspicion of drugs or anything that they could come up with, and then required owners, the city required owners to pay a $500 impound fee, and more. People were furious at Mayor J.B. Jackson, who came up with the idea of confiscation of cars. He was voted out of office. A municipal court judge, a prosecutor for the city, also ousted Tracy Hawsey, the police chief, forced to resign earlier this year. 100 people probably were affected by the program. All of the belongings and the alleged drugs that were seized by police have not been located in an investigation. The totality of cash taken, estimates about $5,000. It doesn't seem like much. One plaintiff claimed police stole $3,800 from her vehicle because they said the cash was obviously part of, quote, proceeds from illegal drug dealing activity. This is David Tulis, and there are stories like that all the time across your feed. And the question is, what are you going to do about them? What are you going to do about them? The state is making raids routinely against the public. Now, there's a report passed along by Tom Humphreys out of Knoxville, formerly with the Knoxville Sentinel, and he's pointing out that there are $2.5 billion a year in annual government subsidies of businesses in Chattanooga. And the Tennessee and the staffers there and three other newspapers, including the Chattanooga Times-Free Press, reviewed hundreds of pages of documents. And as Tom summarizes, it's impossible to gauge whether some of the deals that were done in favor of business were a good value because local agencies awarded businesses multi-million-dollar property tax breaks without calculating the actual loss of tax income. And number two, there's no accountability for some companies that receive these incentives, but then don't report hiring progress to local economic development boards or the state Department of Economic and Community Development. Groups of companies getting subsidies from Tennessee's main grant program, Fast Track, fulfilled about 80% of all jobs promised. Some exceeded their hiring expectations, but nearly 40% said in 2016 that they had fewer than half of the jobs promised. Local officials celebrate when businesses announce they're coming to town, the report found, but often fail to hold companies accountable. Chattanooga's Volkswagen is the biggest recipient of these subsidies, $800 million.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. 3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
A 20-ton boulder tumbled on the scenic highway right near Ruby Falls, and a section of the road had to be closed while efforts were underway to move the heavy object. It's since been cleared, and scenic highway is back open. The Hamilton County Sheriff's Office is trying to track down a man who they say tried to steal an ATV at a construction site. When the construction workers tried to confront the man, he ran away, firing shots. The Sheriff's Office says he disappeared into the woods like Rambo. A manhunt ensued, and they still